listening to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast, a place to empower women of color in the music business.
Welcome to another episode of Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. This is your host, Janisha Jones, back with another special guest. Today we have Lisa Robinson, VP of Community and Social Engagement at Downtown Music Holdings. I have had the absolute pleasure of getting to know Lisa, as we're both women of color, advocates for women of color in the music industry. She just exudes big boss energy, so I knew I had to have her on the show. So without further ado, welcome Lisa to Pub Royalty Queen Podcast. How you doing?
Thank you, Janisha. Thank you so much. I am excited to be here. As I said, my first podcast. So I'm excited. And I wouldn't think of anyone else I would want to do it with. So thank you for having me, and just excited about this conversation.
Me too. I'm just excited to hear about your journey and some insights to see how we can bridge some of the gap and get some of these younger folks out here to know and stand in their truth and power in this business. So let's dig right in. So tell us about your journey through the music industry and what roles led to you becoming VP of Community and Social Engagement at Downtown.
Sure. It's interesting because most people who say, how did you get in the music industry? I want to say 95% of people, including myself, say kind of chose you. And yes, I'm one of those people. So I went to Syracuse to get a degree in communications at the Newhouse School. And I thought I wanted to be a sports anchor, and that's what I was going to do. And nope,
Right.
There were different plans for me. So after graduation, I ended up working at a TV show that it's probably no one will know about it, but it was one of the first. It's almost like Entertainment Tonight, but it was called The Current Affair.
Okay.
Actually, Maury Povich fame, he was the host at the time. And it was exciting. I was one of my few friends who had a job in their industry as far as after graduating. So it was exciting. I was making like $5 an hour and all these crazy hours, but it was really, really fun. And I truly enjoyed it. And it was what they called a training program. So look, imagine a paid internship for about a year. And when it was coming to a close, I had a colleague say to me, hey, her boss was going on maternity leave. And she was like, hey, do you want to work with me in rights and clearances? And I was like, what's that, rights and clearances? And she explained to me, hey, we have to get permission before we use audio. We have to get permission before we use video. And I was like, okay, this is copyright. I never knew that. So that, as they say, piqued my interest in music publishing. And after my experience there, it led to a job at Broadcast Music Inc., BMI, one of the PROs based in the US. And then that, as they say, is history, because then that led to a job at EMI, which music publishing, which has since been acquired by Sony. And that's where I began working in income tracking. Okay. So I was doing income tracking, publishing admin side for over 20 years, going from EMI to HFA, and then eventually getting to Song Trust. And I thought, girl, this is what I'm going to do. And coincidentally, this is the first year of my new role of VP Community and Social Engagement, because I'm doing this role, income tracking, and my CEO, Andrew Bergman of Downtown Music Holdings, he's like, I think you'd be better doing this. And I'm like, what? And he's like, we want to have this new role. We want to talk about community. We want to build community throughout all our outcomes. I'm like, and I'll get compensated. Okay. And then but I still was like not getting to yet. And I said, AB, that's what we call him. I said, so what is it you want me to do? And he was like, what you've been doing, in your personal life, as far as volunteerism, what you've done for Lisa's Living Room, which we'll talk about a little later, what you've done in your sorority, what you've done with the first ERG at Downtown Music. I want you to do that in this new role. And the rest, as they say, is history. But again, Janisha, I thought I'd be retiring doing income tracking. I never thought I'd be retiring, or, this would be my mark on the music industry as far as community, diversity, equity, and inclusion is involved. So no, it's been great. It's definitely been an interesting ride, a bumpy ride at some point, but again, just to have it pivot again, a year ago today is when I started the new role. It's been amazing. It's really my passion, and I'm really loving it. And I haven't loved something in this industry in such a long time. And no shade to income tracking. I loved it.
The sexiest space to
No,
be
that's what I was going to say. It's not to say publishing admin is definitely not the sexy side of the business, but it's important. It's in my opinion, it's the most important. You know, great, you sign this, you know, the songwriter, but you know, who's making sure they're getting paid, who's making sure songs are being licensed and, you know, and registered and paid correctly. And that's what the admin teams, who are often overlooked, that's what they do. They really do the hard work. So again, to be doing something different and something that I'm passionate about, especially at my age, and being this field for so long, it's just exciting. It's really thrilling and exciting. And like you, I'm seeing how I can leave my mark.
Yeah, first of all, we have so many things in common. So first, and I also want to speak to, you mentioned that you started in a paid internship, which is like really rare for women of color in the music industry. So the fact that you were able to get that, I think, is amazing. Also, the fact that someone did kind of introduce you or expose you to rights management, because what we find in the research study that I produced is that most of us occupy those front-facing roles, the marketing and the management and A&R, because those are the most recognized in the industry, right? The most publicized. When we do know, you know, someone has to collect the bag at the end of the day.
That's right.
Someone's got to, you know, have to be transparent about the statements and service the client. So that's amazing that you were exposed to that at an early part of your career. We both have been in publishing, which is amazing. Like, I think publishing is the side of the industry that's probably the most lucrative, but people don't know about it. And so they're not tapped into licensing opportunities. So the fact that you have that knowledge is value add anywhere. And then the last thing is about pivoting. You're pivoting into cultural awareness, community building efforts. You know, you've been appointed to lead that force, whereas I feel like I've been kind of like pushed into doing that because, you know, by proxy of me feeling undervalued myself, needing to create a solution to my own problem, and then realizing that was the problem that a lot of us were having, being offered the space to engage. But I love that we are aligned in so many of those different ways. So that was amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I just want to say, it's so funny when you say, I never really thought about it before, but yes, the woman who actually ran HR, it was part of WNYW Fox. That's the affiliate here in New York City. The show was taped there. And I can see it now, is on East 68th Street off the 6th train. And the woman who was HR, she actually was a woman of color. And then the woman who told me, hey, why don't you work with me in rights and clearances? She was a woman of color as well. So that was, you know, nice to get I think I have a very ideal story on how I entered the business. I'm not saying my career has been ideal since, but it was a nice start, and to start off with these two women of color giving me a chance and an opportunity, it's never lost on me.
Let's talk about that mentorship and how important that is. Like, a lot of women of color, I believe that the figure is like 54% of women of color do not have mentors in the music industry. So can you speak to that? Like, what has your experience been with mentorship? Do you offer mentorship as well? And how crucial is it for someone coming into the industry?
Yeah, I 54%, that's horrible. But it's real, right? I have to say, when I first got into the industry, and when I say now after Fox, when I was, you know, started really getting into music companies, I didn't have mentorship. I'm going to be very honest. That outside of my, you know, my older sister or my mom, I didn't have someone that was in the business mentoring me. I didn't. And in hindsight, I don't think I really sought it out. I do remember in my alumni association, like trying to reach out to people who were doing it, you know, who had graduated before me and were doing great things in the industry. And I have to be honest, I remember not being, you know, people wouldn't call back, or it seemed like there was this competitive nature to it. And it was just, I don't want your job. I just want to know how you do what you do, and, you know, how you get through the day in this industry where there's so many people that don't look like us. But now, because I didn't have that then, I'm so adamant now to make myself available. And it's actually, Janisha, it's funny you give this number. I can't tell you how many panels I've been on, and I'll say, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And so few people do. And
Yeah.
it's like I tell them, I'm not saying it because it sounds nice. I'm saying it because I mean it. And I didn't have that. And it is unfortunate because I think sometimes people they don't take advantage of what's being offered to them, or they may have had a bad experience and say, I don't want to, seek her help. But it's so important. It's not always about, oh, I just need you to hook me up with a job. It could be,
Exactly.
hey, yeah, I had a bad day, or hey, I'm about to renegotiate my contract or my salary, or hey, I want to ask for more responsibility. It can come in so many forms,
Exactly.
mentorship, and that's what is important. So I
Yes.
highly recommend. I don't care how old you are. Like, I have mentors now. There are
Yeah.
women in my industry and women who are not, that I look to, who are doing that thing where I'm like, how are you doing it? What are you doing it? So I make sure to have a very good, as I say, a squad. But I
Yeah.
think everyone should have that. But you have to start with a mentor and seek someone out. And I really think there's no excuse not to in this day and age of LinkedIn and IG.
Right. There
I
are a
had
lot of
none of that.
platforms.
No, it was a phone call,
Right.
maybe an
Right.
email, but it's so much opportunity, to find someone out there. And let me add too, it doesn't always have to be someone who looks like you. Of course it's preferred, right? But you can get mentorship sometimes in the strangest places, so to speak. My mentee, who is one
Right.
of the few who reached out and has been very consistent with meeting with me, she's a white woman. And, and she's very respectful. She's very, she shows up. So I can't deny her that, and she's genuine. So again, it does help to have somebody that looks like you, do not get me wrong, but don't not have a mentor just because you can't find someone who might look like you. Sometimes is also about the experience as well. Because throughout my career, and I know we'll talk about it a little further, a lot of my mentors, as I've gotten higher in my, in levels and roles, titles, have been men. And many of
Yeah.
them have been
Well, shout
white
out to
men.
the men, because the truth of the matter is they dominate those spaces in those rooms. So it's really up to them to take responsibility to be very deliberate about bringing more diverse groups of people into those spaces too. So to your point, yeah.
Exactly. And they are the decision makers, right? To a certain.
Yeah.
So like my CEO, Andrew Bergman, making this decision to say, we're going to create this role for you. That's huge. I always thought, as when I've been on other panels, I've talked about Gary Chergin. He used to be the CEO of HFA, the Harry Fox agency. And he was one of the first people to groom me to, HFA was the first place that I really learned how to be a manager. He gave me the opportunity to create their first income tracking team. And he had more faith in me than I had in myself at the time. And I remember him telling me, he gave me the best advice I've ever gotten in my career. And he was like, don't be worried about people whose opinions don't matter. And that has gotten me through a lot. And this was this white man who was nothing but, in my opinion, decent. He was an ally before I really knew what allies were. And I can't take that away from him just because he doesn't look like me. If anything, and don't get me wrong, nobody gets a pass per se, but because he had the power, he used his privilege for good and put me in a position to have a department where I was then able to hire people that look like me, and some didn't, don't get me wrong, but it provided an opportunity for me and others. So for that, I am always truly, truly grateful.
Honestly, I mean, it's rare, unfortunately, but I'm happy to hear that it's a possibility. I mean, you just dropped so many gems there. I don't even know where to begin. Like, first of all, mentorship can improve your revenue by $40,000 over the span of your career. So it actually does affect your bottom line.
Wow.
Having it is really crucial. The aspect of getting feedback on your work is really important. Being exposed to opportunities that can help you advance in your career is another reason for mentorship. But I also want to speak on like sponsorship and how that really is huge. Like the person that, even though he was your supervisor, your manager, he's someone that believed in you enough to give you the power and the authority to make executive decisions and to empower you to be a manager, like you said, to be in a leadership role. That is using your resources to pass it forward, essentially, right? Like to pay it forward. And I think that is a level of sponsorship that people miss. A lot of people think it's just about giving money, and it's really the access. Really, it's, inviting someone to the table, inviting someone to the conversation, saying their name in the rooms where they may not be in, and being a pioneer for that person. Like, they deserve to be here. So I love that you spoke on that. And I'm hopeful that we can create an environment at Juke Joint Foundation where we can see a lot more of that.
Yes, definitely. It makes it, and I never knew that number. That's amazing. $40,000, that's someone's, salary, right?
Exactly.
That's amazing. And people, to your point, sponsorship, versus mentorship. But yes, being, like you said, being invited to the spaces, taking advantage when you're invited. I think unfortunately that's another thing. I mean, the pandemic has just changed so much, right? For good and some not so good, right? And one of the things, and this is going to definitely show my age, is I feel, sorry for younger people coming up, because I don't think some of them realize the importance of the face-to-face, of sitting in someone's office, of saying, hey, can you grab a coffee or what have you. And I think I don't fault them. I think sometimes if you never had it, you don't know what you're missing. But I came up in this game in the 90s when that's what we did. And don't get me wrong, there have been some CEOs that have definitely been more open than others, but any of them that have really had that open door policy, anyone in the C-suite or leadership team that's welcomed me, I have taken advantage of it. I do that at downtown. We encourage everyone in downtown to do that. Leadership team is very approachable, and
I can co-sign that.
See, yeah, great. And I'm glad to hear that from someone who doesn't work there, but they are, and I take advantage of it, and others do, as well, because to your point, it's just something having a conversation with someone. And again, it's not always about, well, I want their job. It's not that. It's just to your point of just, how is it hard to forget about you? We have conversations every month. We're talking about the business, but we could also be talking about family. We could also be talking about, hey, what are you binging? Again, all in the name of building community. So anything, when people are watching, is please take advantage of having a mentor. Seek one out, actively seek one out. And now with Janisha, that number, $40,000, that's astounding. So there's 40,000 reasons. Seek out a mentor. Again, as long as I've been in this business, at my age, I'm still seeking mentorship, and it has been very helpful in my career, professionally and personally.
I think anyone who wants to challenge themselves to grow and not be stifled, or have a plateau in their career, should seek a mentor. Again, just to continue to expose yourself to what's available. You never know. Maybe where you're at isn't your passion, or it's not really filling your soul, and a mentor can pour into you new ideas and just in general feedback on your work. I think is monumental as well. So let's move on. Let's talk about challenges that women of color face in this industry. We have a lot of them. Can you describe for us one specific challenge that you have to overcome?
Oh gosh. And I'm saying, oh gosh, not because of the question, but this can be a whole nother podcast. Wow. Where do I begin? For me, and I put this in a recent LinkedIn post, I am 5'11". I am direct, I'm outspoken, I'm confident. And for some, I think that's intimidating, but then I hear that I'm intimidating. And it used to really get to me, like, I'm intimidating. And I remember my mom hearing it probably for the umpteenth time, finally said to me, you're not intimidating, they're intimidated. And there's a difference. So
shout out to moms.
Yeah, no, my mom. Shout out Rets. We call her Rets for short, for Loretta. She's my everything. And it's like we maneuver, right, Janisha, in this industry, we have to maneuver so differently than anyone else. And I don't think people really understand how heavy that can be, how exhausting it can be. We talk about, being your authentic self. And I joke, I'm like, you don't be my authentic self. You authentic Lisa. But with that being said, why does that even have to be an issue?
Right.
Why can't I say how I feel? Why can't we agree to disagree without drama. So I think we have no choice, but we're always so mindful of who we are. You know, it's kind of like, oh, don't forget
awareness.
Exactly, a hyper self-awareness, to the point where sometimes we then impose that imposter syndrome on ourselves and other things. You know, trauma, and there's a lot with it. So for me, throughout my career, I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've had really moments where I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? And after each of them was over, it took me some time, and it is trauma. It's like PTSD. It took me some time to realize, okay, Lisa, this wasn't about you. This was about this person. But it does get exhausting to try to teach people how they should treat me. Just because I don't look like you. And I'm not going to dim my light for anyone. I'm not doing that. I've done that before.
We are goddess. We are in pure form, okay?
That is right. That is right. I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing that. I was at a position, and it was so toxic, and I should have gotten, hindsight, I should have gotten out earlier, than I did. But once I got out, it was so exhilarating. It's like that scene at the Shawshank Redemption when he comes out the pipe and he goes like this in his water. I felt like that. But I needed that. So with that, all that being said, I just feel like we women of color in an industry where we are not represented as we should be, especially when you see the number of people who are charting, right? They look at us, right? And when you don't see that reflected in the industry, at the publishers, at the labels, and the list goes on and on, it does something to you, because I don't want to be the only one. I don't.
Oh, that's so crazy that you said that. Like, so first of all, it's the tokenism aspect, right? Being the only person represented in the room, then it's this unfair responsibility and expectation to outperform the people around you, because what you do speaks to everyone else that looks like you, right?
Exactly.
And there are certain groups of people that find solace in being the only person that looks like them. And it's called, what is it, the model citizen or something like that.
Okay.
Where they feel, even though they have that expectation, they already have it of themselves. So it's okay for them to perform that way in front of other people. And it's like, yeah, but why can't we just show up as ourselves authentically and naturally? And I believe that women of color are exemplary people by nature, like without even really trying. So we should be able to just show up as we are, so it's unfortunate that we have that high level of expectation, and to have that magnifying glass on us every time we walk into the office, whether it's how we present to people, or what phrasing we're using, or how we interact with other people. And oftentimes too, being placed in these roles where it's like specific to urban community, and having to be the only person that speaks that language or cares to speak to that community. So there's just so many different layers to it. But I think, to your point, we do need to add more of us to those rooms so that we can mitigate those expectations and show that we're not a monolith in sound or image.
Definitely. And I definitely, like I said, I don't want to be the only one that's not. And when I say women of color, I'm Black women,
right, exactly.
Women, just, different looking, people, that does make for diverse conversation and different experiences. And to your point, talking about the $40,000 for the mentorship, diversity adds to the bottom line as well, because you have these important, different conversations, because our, experiences, are different. I look at us, as women of color, especially, we can't be mediocre. I can't walk into the office looking like a mess. I don't. And I don't, I have to, like that. Exactly. I have to be on my, game. That's me anyway. And that's most of my squad. We got it. I know you're like that. We're going to be on point anyway, but we can't even afford to be a little tad off, and there's something to be said about always having to be on.
Yeah.
To make sure. Yeah, it's very exhausting mentally, and physically. There are times, real talk, that I will be in the shower and I just start crying, but it's just out of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Just like,
you need a release.
That exhale is real. That exhale is real. So, it really took me a long time to, I've had some experiences, and that's probably not for the podcast, but over wine. but I have had some experiences where people are like, that what? Who said what to you? And, and it's just like, again, in hindsight,
Yeah.
it probably it could have really gone left,
Yeah.
but it made me smarter, it made me wiser. It definitely made my skin thicker, but it still hurt, and even when I think back at it, sometimes I'm like, wow.
And it's
wow.
triggering too, because
Oh, yes.
because you're taught, you know how to have self-respect and how to speak up for yourself, but you don't know how other people are going to take your
exactly. And why do I have to, even to your point, why do we even have to care? Let's have a conversation. Let's agree to disagree. Let's be professional. Let's not be disrespectful, and let's move on. But don't come to me a certain kind of way because I don't look like you, or I don't come from where you come from. Talk to me just as you would talk to Bob.
Exactly.
So it's those instances where I look back and I go, wow, I was really, what's the word? Really tested, really tested. And I want to say in hindsight, I rose above the occasion. But of course, when you're going through it, you're ready to, come out swinging. You're ready to come out swinging. And like my mom said, and I've had women call me intimidating. So let's be clear. It's not just the men. I've had women call me intimidating. I've had women that look like me say things and do things, which is, even to me, that's more disappointing. Because of like, we should be comrades and not competition. But again,
what I've seen in the workplace a lot too is that, like, when men are intimidated by you, they tend to want to pin you against other women so that it makes you look, or brings your character down when it looks like you're in competition with someone else. And it helps to change the focus, redirect the focus from them if they're incompetent and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate that that's just kind of like the nature of the environment, again, when you're the only person or one of the few people that look like you in that space. I love all the bars that you're dropping on us today. So let's move on to a new question. What was your Mama, I Made It moment where you realized you were headed in the right direction? And what do you attribute to having reached that point?
This one is pretty easy. I was named one of Billboard's Women in Music executives for 2023. And definitely a Mama, I Made It moment. I never thought I would ever be in Billboard. As we discussed earlier, publishing admin is not the sexy side of the business. So, and throughout the years, my career it was typically, attorneys, creative, president, C-suite. It wasn't someone doing community and social engagement. So for me, it was very, Mama, I made it. I actually think that was my Facebook post too. I think I said, Mama, I'm on top of the world. But it's interesting. I just finished reading Viola Davis's memoir. If you haven't read it, it's awesome. Finding Me. And she talks about when she won the Oscar, and she called it a princess moment. And she was saying for her, that moment, it wasn't about thinking you're, the best. It was more about, this is what all the hard work has led up to. This is what you've deserved, and this is what you've earned. And that's how I feel about Billboard. I just feel like finally, and also being recognized. There's something about being recognized, especially by your peers and colleagues. And also the fact that Downtown even put me in the running, put my name up, is something very special. So yeah, it's just interesting.
It's a feeling too, because now you have, like you said, other women that can see beyond the front-facing roles in this industry, right? Like, and then they can see another brown or Black women in that space and taking up space, not taking up space, but you know what I mean? Like, you're representing there.
Definitely. And it was great to see. I remember throughout the years when every year that list would come out, whether it was that list or Power Players, honestly, Janisha, it was usually the same people. And no shade to them, they've earned it. But after a while, it was okay. And it was always, and I'm not going to say, but it was always the same, like 3 sisters. And I'd be like, all right, great for them, but there got to be some more stars here. So the event was on March 1st, and it was just beautiful to see, be around different looking women, different complexions, different ages, different career paths, whether it's DE&I, whether it is creative, whether it is legal, just to see all these different women in this one space. And, no competition. It was just a really chill, supportive vibe. But there were a number of women who did look like me. There was Tiffany Warren, at Sony. There are, there was Alma Walton, who's at SoundCloud. So, and the list goes on and on, but that was a beautiful thing. And to finally be recognized and all of us be recognized, in our glory and all trying to just make this industry better than we found it.
I love it.
Yeah, so that was definitely has been my moment. And I felt the news a few weeks after my dad passed. And, I just was like, his name was Louis Robinson. I was like, Louis, your daughter did it, and I just know I know he's smiling down on me, but I just knew he would have just
a proud moment.
Moment. And even though he wasn't here physically, I got to this moment because of him and my mom setting me up for success. So yeah, mama and dad, I made it moment.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, congratulations again.
Thank you, sis. Thank you.
Billboard is such a coveted publication, so to be recognized by them for what you bring to the table, what you're able to offer is like, it's tremendous. So one thing we do on this podcast is we give each other our flowers, because it's very hard to sit down with your accomplishments in this business. It's like you're on one project and then you're on to the next one, right?
Exactly.
So this is opportunity to kind of like take it in, like really acknowledge you did that, you did that.
Yes.
Some work you put it in, and now look, the industry is recognizing you as a pioneer in this space. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
So what advice would you give aspiring women of color in the music business?
Well, we always talked about getting a mentor.
Yeah.
Start there. You have to educate yourself too in this business. It's always changing. As much as people, what do you want to do in this industry, right? You want to move through the industry with your career trajectory you want to be, regardless. Just continue to educate yourself and learn about this landscape that is always changing.
What advice would you give yourself?
Already in the industry or trying to get in? Already in?
Let's say, I don't know. Actually, I think both are like pretty interesting perspectives, right?
Okay. I say already in. When I look back, I should have been more of a self-advocate. When I look back, like I didn't negotiate any salary. I think Song Trust was the first salary I ever negotiated. It's like, you can do this. You can, So I definitely would have said to myself, Lisa, don't take what's given to you, negotiate. I would have probably in other jobs advocated a little more for myself. I did that by probably a few jobs ago. I started kind of doing that more, saying, whether I wanted more work or more responsibility, because at that point I'm really looking at the future. What do I want to be? How do I want to lead this industry? Do I want to leave it as VP? Do I want to leave it as SVP? Whatever. But whatever I need to get there, trying to work with my then manager to make it there, and some more helpful than others. But yeah, you have to self-advocate for yourself. I mean, I think that's in any industry, but definitely here, even if you have someone that has your back, don't assume that your manager knows what you want to do. I have a saying, closed mouths don't get fed.
That's what my mentors used to teach me.
Yep. My sister says it. My older sister Lauren says it all the time, and she's a rock star. And yes, closed mouths don't get fed. So it's just a matter of telling your manager what you want to do, and also having conversations with other people, as well, so they know. So they never, I would say, you don't want to be sitting in that exit interview and say, well, I to do this project and I wanted to do that, and your manager looks at you and said, well, you never said anything. So definitely,
advocating for yourself. Even with the research study, one of the questions that we asked was, how confident are you in negotiating for a salary, right? Negotiating. And most of us are very confident in what we're bringing to the table. So actually, majority of us were like, I'm very secure in aspect. But the problem is they don't have access enough with their supervisors or their managers to feel like they can advocate for themselves. So it was like 25% of women of color hardly ever get feedback on their work. And if they do, it's on an annual basis. So if you have that infrequent of time with your manager, even if you feel like you deserve a raise, you don't really get the opportunity to do that.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up, Janisha, because I had an experience like that and it was very
Mm.
frustrating. I would have a
Mhm.
one-on-one with my, a manager, and he went, I thought everything was going okay. He gave little to no feedback in the moment. And then I would get my annual and it would be something entirely different. And I question him, like, why aren't you giving me this information when we meet every week? I don't
Exactly.
remember what I did six months ago, So it would be nice to give feedback in the moment. And I started seeing that this manager didn't know how to manage, at least not me, and what I needed. So you also have to come to a point, that there's a saying, you don't quit your job, you quit your manager. And I
Right.
strongly believe that in certain situations. And you can only go as far as your manager, I think, is going to allow you. And unfortunately, in this
Exactly.
case, you have a number of people who are managing and don't know how to manage.
Yeah.
So
And then
I
they tend to promote people that look like them or remind them of themselves. So that's the other part.
yes,
Like,
yes. And to your point, if we're not getting the feedback, but we're asking for it in the moment, if so you're not being set up for success. So I think in that instance, you have to decide for yourself, how much longer am I going to put up with this? Nothing's going to change. And you're just going to be that guinea pig on that wheel that just keeps
yeah.
constantly turning and you get nowhere. So that's where empowerment would come in, where you get to a point where it's like, I'm not doing this anymore because I know where it's going to go. Nowhere.
You have to know your worth and your value
Yes.
and stand in your power and your truth. Like at the
Yes.
end of the day, to your point, the diversity is what drives profits. So if they're not valuing your perspective, if they're not giving you an opportunity to show up in those rooms, then it really speaks to how they don't value you. And you have to
Exactly.
make the choice to, find another opportunity that does speak to what you can bring to the table. So it's kind of crazy. It sucks that that's how it is, but what I've learned is like sometimes you also have to ask for forgiveness later. Like because the minute you start asking for permission, especially if
Oh,
you're unfamiliar with that space or that territory, they will say no. Like they will
yeah.
just say no.
Yep.
So sometimes you have to just show up for yourself too in ways that
Exactly.
it and let them kind of see, oh, that worked. All right, let's do that again.
Go with your gut. Go. When you have, especially Black women, when you have that moment, because, or, we have those moments, right?
Yeah.
Go with your gut, because more than likely, yeah, that's why you're being treated the way you are. Now, I'm not saying all racial, but the microaggressions are real. Like, I didn't know. Now I look back, there wasn't a word for it a few years ago. They didn't say microaggression, but I had a lot perpetuated against me in hindsight. And I was like, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it was things I would get home and I would say to my husband, you today? Or
Right.
And I'd be like, and here we go. You know what I'm going to, is it me?
Right.
No, it's not. And that's where it gets in your head.
Yeah,
That's where it gets in your heart. Yep. That I used to, girl, I would be crying on the way to work, way home from work. Like, no, and this is, Mental Hearts has that book about racial trauma. It is real. It is true. So listen to yourself too. Listen to your gut, like, yeah, I feel some kind of way and this isn't fair. It's not equitable. The goalpost keeps moving. The rules only apply to certain people. If those answers are yes, 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 it's time to go. It's time to go. You can only give someplace so much grace for so long. Give yourself grace. Trust me.
Oh my gosh. That is a word.
You will be sick, and I've been there. I have been there. There was a time I didn't get out of bed for 2 days. 2 days straight, because I was so depressed and so anxious. I would just get this feeling in my stomach, panic attacks, everything. No job is worth that. No job is.
You need mental health. The job is there for you it's your livelihood at the end of the day. And what you want to make sure that you do, especially if you're just moving into the industry, is to learn what are the goal points, what are the benchmarks that you want me to meet at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year. So I have an understanding of what is expected of me. Now, if I meet that expectation, then maybe a fraction of a increase at the end of the year it makes sense. But if I exceed that, which it tends to be that we exceed those expectations, then meet me where I'm at now. Like I've impacted your business in this way. And what I find is that because, again, it's like the glass ceiling, it's impenetrable for us. Like,
Yes.
we get to the point, I think the number was 18% of women of color in the music business are in senior leadership roles. So you reach this point of middle management, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. You could be in there 10, 15 plus years and still only being middle management. That's as far as you can go. And I believe that also directly affects that we are the highest rate entrepreneurs in America as well, because when you reach that level or that place where you can't go beyond, you start to build your own businesses. Like, I'll be CEO of my own company. It's fun.
And isn't that our history?
Yeah,
when I talk about my sorority, it was built, it was founded in 1920, because as well as the other sororities, the first one historically Black in 1908, because we didn't have anything for us. So what do we do as people of color? We build our own.
Yes.
We build them and we make them great. And this is why these Divine Nine organizations have been around for hundreds of years.
Yes.
We're not a necessity.
Yeah,
you don't want me. That's fine. That's fine. I'm gonna do something else, And to your point, out of necessity, but you have to apply that to yourself. And so I get empowered when I hit like yourself, you branched off and said, no, I'm gonna do this for me. Or people who are like, you know what? My mental health is being sacrificed. I'm leaving. Yeah. I love it. I love it because you never heard of that before. People would just, you would just, you're supposed to be resilient. You're supposed to suck it up. But no, it's not. No, that's not good. That's not how it is. And also, I would say, we're talking about what to do for yourself as far as self-advocate, also witness how other people are being treated. Because, don't get fooled just because you're being treated great or well. Look at how other people are being treated. You might be the flavor of the month, but next month, not so much. At the end of the day, we're all expendable. And I'm not saying that to scare anyone, but
it's business.
It's business. And you also want to see how other people are being treated, because that's equity.
Right.
It's not just let's make sure all the women are treated well. Let's make sure all Black folk are equitable. So and that's crazy. Across, it's across salary. It's across equity. We have different offices in different places. Is it equity as far as that's concerned? So it's a lot to take in. But the mentors help. This is where the squad helps, because if I didn't have my girls that I could call and be like, hey, let me tell you what happened at work today, or what should I do? I couldn't get through this. Conversations with you,
vent to, and that's part of the reason started the podcast. Was I started it at a point where I was starting to feel undervalued, and I'm like, am I tripping? Like, is it me? And when I started reaching out to my friends or my peers out here, and I realized we were all kind of going through a lot of the same thing, but we never had an outlet to express it. So the podcast has become a bit of therapy for a lot of people.
Oh, yes.
Just to load some of that off of their shoulders. They're like, I didn't even realize I was carrying that much on me right now,
Yes.
So it's so important to be able to have an outlet to express that.
Definitely. And I agree. I was telling someone with my organization, Lisa's Living Room, same thing. It started, because I just wanted sisters to have a place to go to, and we could talk about our day and what we were going through and what we were feeling. And not all in the music industry, but you found we pretty much had the same common, issues, as women of color. And to your point, it has been therapy. And even, speaking on panels, I say that it's very therapeutic for me to share my story, and kind of remind myself where I came, what I went through. And it hasn't been horrible. It hasn't been. Right. But it hasn't been great either. I'm going to be very honest. There have been times, a number of times, where I've come home and I'm like, I don't know how much more I want to do this, or these people are coming for me, and again, I've said it, unfortunately, it's people who look different. It's not all white men. It's not all white women, and that does something, it's so hard sometimes, it's like, God, why can't we just go to work, get through the day, go home, and just be happy? But then I think back to what Gary Chergin told me years ago, only worry about people whose opinions matter. And that's what I'm being more conscious of. And and anyone else who's, coming for me in a negative way, I'd probably be too if I weren't me, to be quite honest.
Right.
And I'm gonna own that. So for the handful of people who are not feeling me, there's a lot more who are, and that's fine by me.
Well, Kim said it right. If I was you, I'd hate you too. Like, we desire shiny things, like people are not gonna like it. But
and that's fine. That's when you know you're doing something right. My boss, Love Welchel, he told me that the more, just to be very transparent, the morning of Billboard, I just was feeling almost like, do I deserve this? I was feeling just some kind of way. And he detected it. He was like, what's that? And I was like, I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know.
You're not the only one I've heard that from, by the way. Someone else that I worked with who was on the Billboard Women in Music, she had the same exact reaction. She was like, was this really like, it was the imposter syndrome creeping in. And I'm like,
definitely.
You need to give yourself some grace. Like, you have done the work. Why have
we still it was so bad with me, the imposter syndrome. This is the first time I'm sharing this. I'm only sharing it with my husband. I didn't believe it until I finally got the email for the tickets.
Wow.
Even when they said I didn't believe it. The part of me was like, I'm gonna get an email that says we made a mistake. And so when it finally happened that day, I'm in LA, hours away to start getting ready. And my boss, Love, said, what do you mean? And I said, I just don't feel. And, and I said, and then, got haters, because then you have people coming out the woodwork to congratulate you, which is fine. The people who have been there loved it, the true, genuine accolade. Got them haters, you know who they are. And I was focusing more on the haters. And he just said to me, if they're not talking about you, then you worry.
Right.
There was a little more pep in my step. And then I started thinking, okay, what? And I'm thinking, what would my dad do? What would my mom say? Et cetera. So it went away. But even in that moment, a part of it wasn't letting me really own it and enjoy it, And don't get me wrong, now I just look back and it was a great evening. It was it will go down as one of my most favorite evenings ever. But I was
so many people that you are changing their lives too, just by you being in space.
I hope so.
That's really what it's about. Even like including this with the podcast, like I reached out to people I never met before. You know what I mean? Like, but I saw what they were doing, and I'm like, we're aligned. I want to learn about how you became who you are and where you are. And a lot of us, I think it might span from slavery, like how we are taught we can only be validated once other people validate us. Like we're not able to, or even just like the threat of being an accomplished person, how that can play against you in slavery, right? So it's like, I don't want the attention. And it's like, no, but you deserve it.
Exactly.
You deserve it.
Exactly.
Something like that opens doors. So take it. That's a blessing. So
no, I'm taking the flowers, girl. I'm taking them, I'm smelling them and enjoying them. And again, this is where my squad comes in, where my husband comes in and reminds me, own it, So I just own it and I'm owning it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There you go.
If there was one thing you would have done differently in regards to, I guess we kind of talked a bit about that, right? Like you just mentioned it, like sit down with your accomplishment and take it, like own it. You've been there. So let's talk about something else. What are some common misconceptions that people have about women of color in the music industry?
Oh, wow. Again, another podcast probably. I think the big one is, we're angry. You hear that, angry Black woman, we have attitude, just a stereotypical, nonsense. I think the lack of women of color in the industry, especially African-American women, is that we're not capable. Even to your point when you said about at a certain level, I would just love to see more, Black women just, management positions. And I'm not saying necessarily VP, that'd be great, but just being on the trajectory towards leadership, and management. As I mentioned earlier, working at HFA, that really was a turning point in my career to learn how to manage and manage well and lead a team. It really prepared me for what was to come to lead future. And I think everyone, and again, I'm saying not everyone's a manager, not everyone wants to be a manager, but I think there's something to be said about giving that opportunity and then decide what you want to do with it. So yeah, I just think this stereotype of, you know, the attitude or and not realizing in what we go through. I'm not saying someone who's nasty gets a pass just because they're a
Right.
woman of color, but do you know how much we have to think about? You know, do you know how much thought just goes into just us being? I
Existing.
just want to be. I just want to show up, do my work, get some laughs throughout the day, and just go home. And it's not.
I want to collect my check. Can I just get my check and go home and live my
Just
life?
my check cleans, right? But it's not that easy, and it's not us making a big deal out of everything. It's not. It's just so much. We don't take our skin off at night. You know, I may take my cape off, but we don't take our skin off. And it's just so much. So, you know, as we give ourselves grace, I feel like other people need to give us more grace. Not a pass. You know, that's the other thing. I hope, you know, people are thinking, you know, hey, it's so funny. I had lunch with a former colleague of mine, white guy, someone I also considered an ally, and he is making a conscious effort. He has a company to not hire. He's like, I'm not going to hire any white dude. He was like, but if I have to, I will. And then I said to him, joking, but I really wasn't. I said, please don't hire no messy Black people. And he just started laughing.
Yeah.
Because we don't just want you to hire us because
Optics,
we are fully capable of doing the job. We just want, like we've always wanted, the opportunity. That's it. Stop moving the goalposts.
Right.
Stop moving the goalposts. Stop changing the rules. Give us the opportunity. That's it. Give me the opportunity to do well or not do well, then decide. But don't decide on this. Don't do that. Don't do it that way. And that's
so many messages there, because I mean, I was just over here like the mind is just going so quickly right now. It's like, first of all, speaking to the incompetence aspect of it. Women of color can't afford to enter into the business without some level of qualification or skill. We just don't have the relationships into this business to enter without some kind of credibility. So that's number one. The subconscious bias that comes into play stems from, I think, the media. This is another thing, like how we're portrayed out there spins this level of cattiness, incompetence, you know, for lack of a better word, stupidity. And availability is the other part, like how we're not taught to have boundaries in this business, right? Or that we can take on all of these responsibilities and not say no. Like, I have a family or I have obligations. It's just kind of like pushed on us to be that way, to be accepting of that. And because of those subconscious biases, a lot of us experience discreditation. We experience, you know, bottlenecking. We experience microaggressions. You know, sometimes blatant racism, but it's very hard to quantify racism. Like, how do you prove it? How do you prove that someone was being racist against you?
Are you overreacting?
Right. It's always going to be, especially if it's a white person in HR that you're complaining to about it, like they don't see racism. So how can they know how to navigate that space if you go to them with that kind of complaint? And also, just on that point real quick, what the research study showed was that even if ERG groups or DEI initiatives were in place in the workplace for women of color to address some of their distresses, half of them do have those programs, but have either not used them or would not use them. So they're underutilized. I'm not sure how much of a safe space those programs are for people who are marginalized, right? So we have to take that into account. And then just to top it off, the Billboard op-ed was speaking towards meritocracy, how the music industry needs to adopt a skill-based, experience-based, qualifications-based system, because if the goal is to create more inclusive environments, then you need to stop basing our hiring practices on how young people are, you know,
what school they went to, if that's even needed.
Like, all of those things really prevent diverse groups of people coming into this business. So I love the fact that you touched on all of that within your experience, because it legitimizes the data that we know now exists, but it's far less anecdotal when you have the numbers there to say, no, this is a fact This is just something that happens, and here's how we address it. So thanks for that.
And thank you for the relationship part of it, which is a big part of it, right? Who you know, what you know. I have to say, with the exception of downtown, every job I've worked at, there was always, and I think you're probably gonna shake your head on this one, there was always someone interning there who was like somebody's friend's son, and in hindsight, I was just like, whatever. But
even interns, sometimes they're in the leadership positions.
Really? And like that's because that's so-and-so's golf buddy's son. That's so-and-so's, we're in the same fraternity. That's whatever. But it's so relationship based, but it's fairly so. So even with me now, I'm very much, my network is very vast, but that's something I built up and I manage.
Yes.
And I'm very, very proud of that. But that didn't come from who my mom knew, who my dad knew, or the hookup, as they say.
Exactly.
Again, because if you constantly do that, you're never going to have us
Not at all.
Never. If you're just inviting everybody, who in your space.
In your circle, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And let me tell you, it's so crazy. But so tomorrow, I'm hosting a dinner with a white woman ally in the music space to have this difficult conversation with other white women in music business, with women of color in music business, and how to be an ally and what that actually means. I think a lot of these initiatives that are coming out now are like very performative. Like they want to be on the good side of history, so they want to be a part of the conversation, but they're not actually doing anything actionable to create any real equity. So I'm like, all right, here's the real truth. Here's how we're feeling. And here's how you can use your privilege and your resources to create or restore some balance here. And I plan to have more of those, like maybe on a quarterly basis. So I'm not sure if you'd be interested in being part of that dialogue.
No, I would love to, because there's actually, I don't know if you've heard, there's this book, it's by Sarah Rero, I forget the other woman, both women of color, and they have this, I think it's throughout the country, but they have this dinner where they invite white women and they talk about their racism.
Yeah.
And it's like no holds barred, and it's they go from everything from the tears to the like behavior, to everything. And they've been getting as much good feedback. They've been getting, of course, negative feedback as well. But it sounds like the same thing. And again, having these difficult conversations, and to your point, not being performative. I've had someone who swears that I know. She swears she's an ally, and she's not done anything ally-like. Wow. But I don't care how many movies you watch on BET. I don't care how Tyler Perry. That doesn't make you an ally.
How many Black friends you have.
Exactly. What makes you an ally, to your point, are the action items.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What have you done? I'm on the board of Music Business Association.
Yes.
And Portia Sabin, the president, she was very intentional with saying this board is going to be people of color. This board is to be LGBTQ. And now it is
very diverse.
Very diverse. She said it, she did it. We see it. That's how it works. I don't want to hear, I do this or whatever. Like I even said, the last panel I was on, and typically every panel I'm on, there's one white woman who asks how she can be an ally. And I always say, great. It's great that you asked that question.
Yeah.
This is what you can, I can't tell you everything. I can't teach you. But what I will say, do you know when you go into the office, if the Black woman who's at the front desk, do you know her name? Have you said somebody's name in a room that you weren't in? Again, walking the walk and not just, talking the talk. Because that is one thing that infuriates me, is when people, they're an ally and they're anything but. If you're not going to be an ally, stay.
Right.
Don't sign up. It's okay.
No, it's not taking room for other people who are actually trying to do the work.
Exactly. And you'll know, because they'll ask the question, and when you give them that real answer, they're not like, oh my God.
Right.
Like, yes, let's have the uncomfortable conversations. And no, nothing's gonna change overnight. But yes, use your privilege for good.
Exactly. We have to find some comfort in discomfort.
Oh yes, definitely.
Right. Like I said in my presentation at South by Southwest, someone asked, well, how do we create more equity? How do we become allies? And I said, you have to be ready to just respect other people's points of view. Like, even if you have never experienced that, or you haven't seen it with your own eyes, don't discredit someone else's lived experience. And also just be respectful of the fact that we are made differently. We're coming from different backgrounds. We have different points of view. And, empathy, I think, can go a long way. Yeah. So anyway, Lisa, I just appreciate you so much.
Feeling is mutual.
Like, I have a soul sister out there in the world, like I see myself in you. And
definitely.
And I'm looking forward to continue building this relationship. So
definitely.
And so much for being on the podcast. What can people expect from Lisa? What are you working on right now that excites you?
I'm continuing to do, again, thank you for having me. First podcast, I'm so excited. Hopefully it won't be the last. And you just keep doing it, sis. You're making a difference and you're doing the work. So appreciate you and we see you. So I have coming up, I'm actually going to be at Drexel University in a couple of weeks with Sound Thinking. They're having a day or half a day with some of the Drexel students and some other colleagues. So very excited about that. Going to head to the city of brotherly and sisterly love, as I'm calling. As I mentioned, I also have an organization, Lisa's Living Room. We've been presenting panels, virtual events since the pandemic. Prior to that, we were doing some things in person. We'll probably start coming in person at some point or returning to in person. But the virtual space has been really good to us, allowing us to have people sign in from various places around the world. And we actually had an event just last week, What Would You Tell Your Younger or Older Self, which was awesome. We did it. We collaborated with Black Girls Chillin', these young ladies that are doing great things in the space. Alasia Brown, really doing big things. We're actually next, Lisa's Living Room event will be about travel. We want to talk about the importance of travel, whether you're doing
I'll be there.
Yes, solo, group, how to travel, safely. What are some great destinations? So we just want to talk about do it affordably, and no, you don't have to get on a plane. So we just want to talk about that also in the spirit of, learning about different cultures and people that look like us and don't look like us. So that's June 8th, and people can just go on lisasliving.com to learn more. And other than that, getting ready for my 50th May. I will actually be at Music Biz. I will be at Music that week. So plan to have some festivities going on. Definitely going to visit Henry Hicks and the gang at the National Museum of African American Music. Highly recommend the visit if you haven't been there. And just between now and then, I'm just taking it day by day. God is good.
Amen.
Day doesn't by. Don't think about my dad, and don't think about, again, my dad and my mom are the true, they're the ones who set me up for success. They're the CEOs. But just day by day, and just trying not to take all of this so seriously, keep
it light.
But again, it's my LinkedIn post, under my profile, it says just trying to leave this world better than I found it. And originally my thought behind that was just leaving it better for my babies, who are actually young adults, but also leaving it behind, better for other people as well. So whatever little I can do, I'm happy about that. And that's my legacy.
So where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. LinkedIn. I'm on that daily. It's Lisa J. Robinson. There are a lot of Lisa Robinsons. So definitely check for Lisa J. Robinson. Also, lisasliving.com. You can reach out to me on there. IG, I don't use that too often, but if you want, it's phenomenally finer. But LinkedIn and lisasliving.com are your best bets.
Reach out to Lisa, especially if you need mentorship. Again, she's very deliberate about that.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you again. This was so awesome. I had a great time with you. And until next time.
Yes. Thank you, sis.
Remember, stay positive, inspired, and true to yourself. Go out there and kill it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Pub Royalty Queen Podcast.